Let me see your hands. Who took the bus? Did you have fire in your gut?
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Gut Check. As always, I am Gut Check 2X with Gut Check Big Lip. Today, we want to talk about wide receivers, but before we do that, you were just in Thailand. Tell us a little bit about that place.
Yeah, I had a teammate of mine living in Thailand, so me and one of our future basketball analysts, Joe P. Picks, went down there to have a good time. But the whole time we were there, my mind was on this podcast, wishing we filmed this sooner. And I just want to say, wide receivers, it's kind of like my number one position. All I do is watch wide receivers, especially when I'm at work and I have nothing to do. If you're at work watching this, plug your ears. But yeah, let's get started.
All right, we'll get straight to it. Today is wide receivers. I think this year it's the most electric position to look out for. You just got freaks all across the board, in my opinion. So unlike the last video, I'm actually excited for this as well. So Neil, how about you just kick us off with your number one wide receiver?
All right. Before that, I just want to clarify how I grade wide receivers, because there's different types of wide receivers, but I like X receivers. So in college, they just line up at the line of scrimmage. They're not in motion. And when you're an X receiver, you're kind of the alpha guy. You know, you have to win your 1v1 matchup on the outside. And I've made mistakes of not valuing the X position before, like last year with Jalen Hyatt and JSN. You know, I learned from my mistakes, right? So I really like X receivers, and then they can do the other shit. But you got to be able to play on the outside first. Another thing is I watch them, and can I say, okay, if I put this guy on a team, can he win a 1v1 matchup against the best corner on their team, right? So I'm not going to use the Packers, for example, because no one can beat Jair off. No one can beat Jair, period. Not even Justin Jefferson. So we'll leave that aside. But
we'll talk corners another day.
Can you beat Pat Surtain? You know, that's my question. Like, if Marvin Harrison lines up against Pat Surtain, is he going to win, right? And then the main one is separation. It's a separator's game these days, and that's all it is. Words I hate. When I see strengths of a receiver, I don't give a shit about contested catching and body control. That means nothing to me. That does not translate. If you're contested catching in college and body control is your main thing, bye. I don't care. All right, Rob. I think you might disagree with some of that, but you'll have your turn. All right.
Yeah, I'll get to mine.
So this one was a no-brainer for me. Malik Nabers. All right. Now he's number one for a lot of people, but check out these timestamps. Tuesday, November 28th at 9:10. And there's no timestamps here, but it's a little before this one. I thought he was the best wide receiver in college football, period. And the reason I started to like him was more because I started watching Jaden Daniels, because I'm like, oh, he's going to be the Heisman. People say he's going to be the Heisman. Let me watch. And I'm like, holy shit, who the fuck is this guy? He is everything you want in a receiver. He looks the part. He's not too skinny, but he's not too thick either. At first, I compared him to a Chris Olave in a thicker Jamar Chase body. But then I just realized, I think his best comp is probably Stephon Diggs. And here's just some of my research, which I've done on Twitter. As you can tell, he just makes corners look silly. And that's kind of what you want to see from an alpha number one receiver. You want to make corners look silly. And that's another criteria of mine. If you're barely beating Mississippi State's corners or something like that, I don't have much to say. And another thing that comes up a lot when people talk about him is he had gun issues, and he's kind of a diva wide receiver, right? And that just brings him up for me more than anything, to be honest. So you're speaking to a wall there in terms of that. All right.
I would say
You'll-
I disagree with
You'll
the,
get your turn. You'll get your
with-
turn.
so I'm supposed to just sit here for the next 5 slides until you get to mine.
No, I'm just kidding. All right, what part do you disagree with?
Well, I like Malik Nabers. I think he's really smooth. He's good in that regard. He's got good hands and all of that. I just again, I mean, he's high on my list, and I'll get to my analysis of him. But I wonder a little bit. He benefited from having a guy in Jaden Daniels that could throw an absolute perfect ball, especially down the field. And again, I was low personally on the defenses this year in the SEC, especially the secondary. Minus Bama, I don't think the secondaries were that great in the SEC, and you could definitely see that. Obviously, he also had Brian Thomas Jr., who maybe played a little bit in Malik Nabers' shadows, but when you have another guy on the other side of the field that takes some attention and you have to like regard him in some way, I think that always opens things up. So a little bit of my thing with him is that, but overall I'm pretty high on Malik as well. So you can continue down your list.
Yeah, and like,
And I'll give it to you that one of that first text is what you sent me a while ago, telling me to check his highlights. So I'll give that to you, that you've been on him for a little while.
Yeah, and like, he had a good game against Bama, and the thing with Nabers is like, if you're a corner lined up against him, you have like the fear of God in you, that he can score on you at any time, any place. Like, he can, like, there's a chance he can score on you no matter where you are. Like, he just has you just have that fear to him. He has a fear factor about him, especially when I watch him. And I think that goes a long way. Like, my second guy,
I will say, before you go to Malik, or before you get past Malik, the one thing I would say is I would like to see him be a little more crisp in his routes. I think he sometimes his speed is good, but sometimes he's a little too lackadaisical, where he's just trying to glide too much, where if he could snap off his routes a little more, he'd create even more separation. So that'd probably be one of my takes. But again, I'll get to him in a little bit.
No, that's a fair take. It just comes down to, do you think he can do it in the next level? In my opinion. All right, next we got the Maserati, and he is not like my guy. I put him there because he's good, but this dude's all about, in my opinion, he's the most polished wide receiver in this draft class. He's not better than Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Like, I like him, but there's some prospects that I think you put them at such a high pedestal, that they're just never going to live up to that hype. And he does all these things great: polish, hands, release. We'll get into the combine and pro day dilemma of his, but my comp for him is DeAndre Hopkins and Kerry McLaurin a little bit, because I do have separation concerns with him. He is not a Devontae Adams, never will be, and his highlight plays are not necessarily plays that I think will translate. So this is just a regular, like, this was a highlight play he had against, I believe it was Baylor.
That's Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. My bad. I don't know who this corner is. He's obviously not a good corner. Otherwise, I would have heard his name somewhere. There's holding, but a lot of his highlight plays are him just making a freaky catch, out physicaling the guy. Right? I don't see that happening that consistently. I don't see him doing it that consistently at the next level. I remember even when he had Stroud, he made like that one-leg catch, but that's a lot. Like, he's still the number 2. He's great. I know he's great, but he just can't separate the way that Nabers can. So I have to put him at number 2.
There's one thing I'd like to get to is your first point, how when you put him on a pedestal, it's impossible for them to live up to that hype. The question, sure, yes, he's on a pedestal, but is he going to perform better than the other receivers in the draft? Does he have a better chance of performing at a higher level than the other receivers in the draft? I would say overall, yes.
I kind of see this as the reason. If you remember me mentioning, do you make like corners look silly or how much separation? Now this is what if you have an accurate quarterback, like a traditional accurate pass, like pocket passing quarterback, he's going to be good, right? But another weird, if you give him like Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, someone like that who is not an accurate passer, who's not as good, who's not a pocket passer, he's going to struggle putting up numbers as if he's with someone else, like a traditional Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, that kind of person. That's what like if you put the Maserati on the Giants, where he might go, who do you think will have put up better numbers with Daniel Jones throwing? Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Nabers?
I think they'd both have a cooked career if that's the case.
That is the case. But if you were to choose one, I would choose Malik Nabers. But yeah, that's where the line was for me. Like that's why
you got to also take into account that a lot of his contested catches are because he had a dog shit quarterback.
I thought that too, but he had a lot of contested catches with CJ Stroud, or CJ Stroud would just drop it in a bread basket for him. You know, I don't know. I don't know how much that's going to happen. And a point I didn't put on here was if you watch Ohio State versus Michigan, Michigan has a second round corner, slot corner, Mike Sanderstill. I think that's how you, and he was, if you're Marvin Harrison, you're getting bullied by like a 5'9" slot corner for much of the game. I don't know. Again, the whole Pats, if you put it like, I keep coming to Pat Surtain because I just think he's like a fringe top 10 corner. But if you put him on him, like I worry what's going to happen. You know, that's all.
All right. I mean, still top two, so I can't really...
What are your thoughts on like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave being better than him?
I mean, I was really high on Garrett Wilson, especially going into the NFL. Garrett Wilson's just a freak in every sense of the word. I mean, he's fast. He's in and out of his breaks.
There's my point. He made like Joe Flacco, he put up 1,000 every year with Joe Flacco, Zach Wilson.
Yeah, but that's now we're looking at the NFL, but I'm talking going into the NFL as a prospect. And then if you look at Olave, I think Olave, I mean, he didn't pop off I thought he was going to be good, but he didn't pop off the board in terms of, I mean, he was a good route runner, but if you look at his highlights going in, at least what I remember, it was more just kind of that smooth style of finding the gaps in defenses rather than completely breaking them. So I don't know if even he was quite the make corners look silly in your mind, but obviously you still liked him. So that's where I get a little away from those. You don't have to necessarily make a corner look insanely bad as long as you know how to play.
Yeah. And a little last week, I think Chris Sims, or 2 weeks ago, Chris Sims, who I watch a lot, said has the Maserati at 3. So I'm actually higher than him than some other people.
All right.
All right. This is probably one of my favorite wide receivers in this whole draft. A.D. Mitchell. You see this pit bull. It's here because he's a dog. He is a dog in every regard. He's what people wanted George Pickens to be. That's how I say it. So, little background. He played at Georgia he started his career at Georgia. Okay, so the whole character concerns thing, that kind of blows it out of my own head because it's like, okay, you're playing at Georgia, a run first team. So, if this guy didn't have character concerns, I think putting him at 3 is not too crazy. All right. My first clip is of him just in Georgia as a freshman, just routing up some dude in the red zone. And this is the hardest thing to do as a receiver when you have no space to work with and you need instant separation. This at supposedly 6'4", 210. This is insane. Okay. And then again, they say you want to see a young breakout. He is just fluid and just routing people. Again, notice how he never gets the ball when He just
That looks so much like me back in the day.
true. Granted, if you were playing slot and I was covering you, it'd be a different story. Again, easy separation for a dude that's big. And then we get to competition, and he was just against Alabama. He made Terry and Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry look like children. And this is what was my main selling point. He just made them look like kids. All right, we got this one play. And if you look at the highlights, this is Kool-Aid down here. Instant. There's like 5 yards of space between them. And this is, again, against Kool-Aid. A little contested catch. This is what all of Marvin's catches look like, but I'll just show you one. And he has the lowest drop percentage of any receiver in the class. And the weird thing about it is he has the lowest drop rate, but the highest body catcher, which is a weird stat. Like, you don't want to see a body catcher, but that just tells me he's open all the time. My comp for him, he looks like CeeDee Lamb, but he just looks, I don't know why. That's just what I keep saying. He has that bend. He's got the hips like CeeDee Lamb. And sometimes it's just, this is against Washington. It's like taking candy from a baby. So this was the first play you see here. This was so I think they had 2 plays in the red zone. And the first one, Texas tried to do something stupid. Quinn Ewers did something stupid. He demands the ball. He demands the ball out loud, and everyone knows it's going there. And again, candy from a baby. And the offense of Texas was geared towards having Xavier Worthy touch the ball. So this dude just literally had to win on his own and wasn't getting the ball all the time. So that's why he's my number 3. What are your thoughts?
I like the CD comparison. Obviously, CD's my guy. I'm a Cowboys fan. CD is everything to me. The one thing I think CD is a little smoother than him.
Yeah.
But I think AD Mitchell has the potential to be more of a freak athlete than him. Has a little bit more speed than CD. But I like AD Mitchell. My biggest knock on him that I'll get to is he wasn't as consistent as I would have liked him to be. Mm-hmm. So in terms of consistency, I'd worry that maybe if he struggles early on, you could see him just kind of go away. I think a comparison that I was seeing a lot was a version of T. Higgins that's better at running routes. In a sense, a more athletic and like below the waist T. Higgins is what I kind of thought of a little bit. But I like the CD comp as well. I don't have too much else to say that I'll get to some other stuff about him later on. But overall, I think if he stays injury free as well, then I could see him doing well. And I think it'll depend a little bit on what system he gets put into. But I mean, I'm high on him as well.
And like just the way he made those 2 supposedly first round Bama corners look was just sold it even more for me.
That's also where I struggle a little is, yes, Bama's corners are first rounders in this draft, but I think it's because it's a relatively weak corner class. Mm-hmm. So I was not all that impressed by, especially Kool-Aid. I think he would drop in most drafts to second round type guy, but
I think there's a chance that both of them might go to the second round. But the thing is, like, he made him look silly. So that's kind of what you expect. One sec. Let me turn the light on. I probably look purple right now.
And during the break, we will talk about... Never mind, he's back.
All right, number 4, Jerome Odunze. So this guy... Again, it's a lot of the same things with Marvin. He's got nuance, polish. He's a great human. From what I heard, he's just a great person in general. the best contested catcher in the draft, hands down. I think he's got a ridiculous 75% contested catch rate. He does the little things right. I listen to Kurt Benkert a lot. He's his number one wide receiver because he has late hands, does all the little things he does all the small things that only a good quarterback would notice, correct? And he has the best win rate against man coverage. So the stats, some stats are very much for him. Unfortunately, when I watch the film, I get a lot of Cortland Sutton vibes. I don't have any videos. I think Two-Time left some videos on it. But all his highlights, there's someone on his hip so much of the time. And I just don't like that at all. That's all I got to say about him. He's a great person. I think also he might end up being the best receiver in this class if he falls to pick 10 for the Jets. Because just hearing about this guy, this is everything Aaron Rodgers loves in a wide receiver. Everything except being able to separate right away. I don't think he's going to play. I don't think he can play on the outside as well as Garrett Wilson can. He's going to have to be playing in the slot. So that's why he's at my number 4. Because if you put him as a number 1 receiver on a team right now, he's going to have a tough time. But if there's another good receiver, he will definitely eat.
Funnily enough, I'm pretty sure, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this regarding the receivers. FanDuel released a way too early wide receivers AFC ranking that had a little sneak peek to what we might see in the draft, where Rome Odunze was listed next to the Chargers. Ooh. And I believe Brian Thomas was listed next to the Bills, and they were on that top AFC rankings. Do you think if that were to happen, and I know this is a little off topic, would you start to think that things are rigged in the NFL?
I don't think Brian Thomas falls that low. Brian Thomas is going to be a top 20 pick. So teams aren't going to give up.
Sure, but Rome to the Chargers, that would mean he's likely number 2 off the board?
Yeah, or 1.
Or 1 even.
There's 3, I think, top 3
if Arizona trades back.
Yeah. No, I don't think there's any possibility he goes 1. I don't think he goes I don't know if he goes top 10. So,
but to your beloved Jets, now that Mr. Rodgers is on there, if Rome's available, do you want if it's between, I know Brock Bowers has been mocked there quite a bit.
Yeah.
If it's between Rome and Brock Bowers, who would you want them to take?
I'd say you literally give Aaron Rodgers a blank slip, tell him to write the name of the person you want him to take, and you take it.
But I'm not talking about Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
I'm talking about what would you do?
I'll take. I think they already have Tyler Conklin in it. Okay, I'd take Rome.
Tyler Conklin.
I think he's okay. I'm just saying he's not
comparing Tyler Conklin to Brock Bowers.
I think Tyler Conklin is I don't think he's as good as you realize, but
yeah, he's not as good as I think.
I think a good receiver can do more damage. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I don't like Mike.
Just give me an answer. Brock or Rome? Okay,
Rome.
Now let's go on.
All right.
Let's go on.
This is
number 5.
This is my number. This is another one of my guys. This is gonna ruffle some feathers, but we got Javon Baker. First thing that comes into mind when I watch him is a joystick. He's shifty. He knows how to separate for his speed. He's dusting people, but he runs a 4.54, whereas Rome runs like a 4.4. This dude runs a bit slower, but is just a better separator. My comp is Dontavian Wicks, whose comp is also Devontae Adams. So take that, or I don't know the saying, but take that as you will. Do I think he's kind of like Devontae Adams? Maybe. This is from Senior Bowl. Just shifty, just knows how to beat people. He's got some really quick feet. And he can break. He breaks away really well. And he makes corners look stupid. So yeah.
I mean, if
And
Look
this
at,
is the
I
senior.
saw one highlight.
This is the Senior Bowl, though.
I agree, but I saw one highlight reel of his after you told me to take a look at him, and I don't think his separation is as good as you think it was.
I think
He's very athletic at the catch, and I think he has good, strong like hands. He high points the ball pretty well, which I think high pointing is probably his biggest strength. His feet do look fast, but I mean, then you can not that I care that much about a 40. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown ran like a 4.64, so the 40 doesn't matter that much, but in terms of separation, if that's your big thing that you're saying you're going off of, I don't think he gets as much separation as you're talking about.
Well, okay. Well, one sec. Let's watch all the film.
Look at that. That's just a slip at the top.
That is, you keep saying, like, you texted me, oh, his corners are stupid, and like we keep saying
that's a good route, but
but that's a good route against arguably a top 3 corner in the class, Max Melton from Rutgers, who is a freak, by the way. Like he tested out as a freak, and I'm not a big combine person, like, but he is a freak. He 4.39 guy, like big for like just not undersized. So I'm just saying.
I agree, but when you take those reps at the Senior Bowl, you're getting the highlights from like a full day's work, whereas the highlights from his college tape, again, they're highlights, so you don't see a lot of things. But what I saw on his consistent highlight tapes was that he was making sick catches, but his separation itself wasn't anything special.
What do you think that is? Like 8 yards?
Again, I'm not saying he doesn't get separation, but if you look at like a full view of his highlights, like one, tape, there's maybe a couple where he gets insane separation, but that should be every receiver that's even considering getting drafted. They should have a couple where they make a corner look stupid.
But he makes them look dumb a lot. And then another thing I learned when watching these people is sometimes like you just got to get on the ball, right? And I'm not a rack. I don't care about rack in terms of if you're able to like break tackles as a receiver.
Yak.
Run after catch, yards after catch, same thing. But like Zay Flowers last year, people were able to predict that he'd be able to run routes just because like the way he gains yards after the catch is through like juking people, and that's sort of what Javon Baker does. So that I also think we haven't seen the best of him. And for your separation thing, there's a stat. He has the second best success against man coverage behind Rome Odunze. So
he plays for UCF.
Exactly, and he's their whole offense, whereas Odunze has 2 other NFL receivers with him.
He's not playing the top corners in the country all the time, but
neither is Odunze. Neither is Odunze, and I showed you
I mean, corners, like I said this year, we're just down bad.
Yeah, they're not that great, other than the top corner. But Max Melton's a solid corner.
Okay, yeah.
Then deceleration is kind of a thing we saw with like the route a couple times ago, and this corner just falls over. And granted, he doesn't get the ball, but another thing. And he put up like 1,000 yards with, I think, some Jason Plumlee as quarterback too, which, yeah.
All right.
And then these are some honorable mentions. Brian Thomas, he's going really high. He's like a Christian Watson with hands, but I need some more polish. The best white receiver in the draft, in my opinion, is Ricky Pearsall. He's awesome. And then this dude, he is like, if you want, I know I've been saying X receiver, outside receiver, but if you want, like for fantasy purposes or just in general to like who could be like the next like Amon-Ra St. Brown, my money's on Jalen Polk.
All right.
Yeah, great run blocker, and he's making catches while getting just completely drilled like Vontaze Burfict style, and yeah. That's my 2 cents on these guys. Rob, you want to take it over?
Yeah, I mean, you guys can understand why we call him Big Lip. He took all of 30 minutes to go over his 5 receivers, so I'll take it a little quicker if you want to go to the next slide.
We're here for a reason. Don't get that twisted. Okay, we're here for a